How are we doing, guys? Welcome back to Barça Buzz TV. I'm joined by my good friend Robbie to start off with, and we're going to discuss today Marcus Rashford and the potential for Barcelona signing Marcus Rashford. But first and foremost, Robbie, how are you, mate? Are you okay?
Yes, bro. I'm so happy to have me again on here. I love filming this video with Barca Buzz and especially with you, Oscar. And I'm again delighted to this time with positive news because I love Marcus Rashford as a player. To be honest with you.
Yeah, I think we've discussed him in the past, not in as much detail as what we're going to go into in this video, but we have discussed Marcus quite a bit, in previous videos as well. Obviously, we've done stuff about Rafael Leao, Luis Diaz, and spoken mostly about left wingers really because we obviously seem to be very keen on getting strengthened in that position as such. And it is a pleasure as always to be joined by you, Robbie, because as I've said already, he is the number one for me in terms of when it comes to Barcelona tactical Twitter. There's no doubt about it. And if you haven't done already, do check out Robbie because does post some fantastic threads, especially the Juan Garcia one recently, mate. That was absolutely on point, that one, mate.
Thank you, man. Thank you. I. This is why I post. To be honest, this kind of words motivates me to keep on going. And yeah, I did spend a lot of time, to be honest, on that Juan Garcia thread, and I'm actually happy with the positive reviews that I got from him from it.
Lovely stuff, mate. Lovely stuff. Well, let's jump into it. So, Marcus Rashford, first and foremost, let's look at what he will bring to this Barcelona team. For you, from a tactical point of view, Robbie, I mean, first of all, I guess we'll start with what do you think his best position is to start with? Because obviously we know he is quite a flexible forward. And secondly, what will he bring that our other forwards don't bring at this moment in time?
Yeah, as I said, I think I said this in the last episode too. The left winger in Hansi Flick's position is not actually a winger. The winger is of course Balde because he's the one that keeps on touching the the left hand side line and keeps on holding the width. And Marcus Rashford and practically the left winger in this system that we play is of course a shadow striker because shadow striker means that he plays in behind of Lewandowski's pace and gravity. Basically, Lewandowski pulls one of the center backs and the left winger, which is not the left winger, but I will call it left winger because it helps with the talk. It's actually attacks the space and maybe pulls the right back for Balde to appear in the final third or vice versa with. Balde pulling the right back and the left winger attacking the space between the right back and the right center back. And of course, the first name that we always spoke about was Leo, but I will not speak about him in this episode because I will focus only on what Marcus Rashford brings to this team. And I remember there was I think 23-24 preseason with Barcelona that Ansu Fati played a match alongside Balde against Milan, which I think we won 2-0, and Ansu Fati scored a banger. And I refer to that match because Alejandro Balde and Fati was a great dynamic and a great duo and a great basically combination on that left hand side. And Marcus Rashford is a very similar profile to Ansu Fati. He's basically a taller and a more, of course, post-injury Fati, a more rapid Ansu Fati. And I do think that the one that's most excited about this transfer to Barcelona after Rashford, of course, is Alejandro Balde and of course Lamine Yamal, which I said I think in the last few weeks I always reminded people that there is a player in Marcus Rashford that of course Lamine Yamal will bring out, and of course Alejandro Balde will bring out that player in Marcus Rashford too.
It's interesting because this season, outside about even inside Barcelona, obviously we've seen Rafinha have his best season by far in the Barcelona shirt. Alejandro Balde probably have his best season in the Barcelona shirt, and Jules Koundé, for example, as well, also probably have his best season in the Barcelona shirt. There's so many players you can kind of list in this, but in terms of players that have had kind of heavy amounts of criticism over the last couple of years, rightly or wrongly, whether we like it or not, Balde before his injury was probably getting quite a bit of criticism at that time in terms of his form. I don't personally agree with it, but we have seen this season with Barcelona and say PSG as well with Ousmane Dembele, where with the players that have kind of been written off in the past, have kind of made big statements this season. I feel Marcus Rashford, um, for me, is one of those players next season going into this one who could be. I think the kind of common phrase is a player to invest stocks in, because he feels to me Marcus Rashford now is kind of the low point of Marcus Rashford. But for me, a couple of months building confidence. If he gets a full preseason in, if we get the signing done in time, in terms of in the next week or so, you have a full preseason of Marcus Rashford working under Hansi Flick, working with these players. I just feel he's a player that within 1 to 2 months, straight away, people will say, "Oh, that's the signing of the summer," kind of thing. I genuinely do feel he has that kind of potential with him. What I also like about Rashford is the fact that he can play up front if we need him to. If he can be play instead of Lewandowski, because obviously we have to remember Lewandowski is 37 in August, and at that kind of age, a drop off can be very sudden. We've already kind of seen a little bit of a drop off progressively over the years with Lewandowski, more from a physical point of view. Obviously, Ferran, we know, is kind of a confidence player. He can have kind of great moments, he can have kind of bad moments, and you kind of probably over a full season not going to get a consistent Ferran Torres. And Dani Olmo, we know, has injury problems. So for me, the fact Rashford can also play up front is a massive, massive selling point. The fact he can kind of play on the right hand side as well, maybe obviously nowhere near to the same standard as a Lamine Yamal, but he is certainly an option there. And I think it is good having flexible forwards in the Hansi Flick system. And I think as well, is Villa spell. If this was Marcus Rashford coming into Barca off the back of his spell under Ruben Amorim or Eric Ten Hag over the last sort of 18 months, I kind of be a little bit more reluctant. But I think under Unai Emery, I've seen a serious player once again in Marcus Rashford. I think back to, say, the PSG home game where Villa almost overturned a 3-1 deficit. He absolutely dominated his duels. I think he a couple of times, some lovely bits of skill. I think he set up 2 of the goals in that game. He was absolutely on fire in that particular match. And for me, it shows Marcus Rashford just in a short spell like that, in a far from ideal kind of environment, in terms of Villa, with the greatest respect to them, are not as good an attacking unit as what Barcelona are, both in terms of individual talents of Lamine Yamal, Rafinha, etc., and tactically, I just think Hansi Flick is a far better attacking coach than what Unai Emery is. And I just think if Marcus Rashford can show that potential at Villa, where he's kind of having to play in all sorts of different positions, not starting every week, and just not having that constant sort of pattern and momentum, what can he do in a Barcelona shirt? And I just think he can maintain and probably better those levels that he produced at Villa for me. Would you agree with that, Robbie? Would that really sell Rashford in that sense to you?
Yeah, I completely agree. Even more on the first point that you said, that uh, it's important for a footballer, especially when you analyze him and scout him, to take in context the such a cultural environment that he's in. Like, let's be honest, what are the coaches that didn't believe in Marcus Rashford? There are only 2 names, and that's Eric Ten Hag and Ruben Amorim. And if we look at this Manchester United squad, Ruben Amorim and Eric Ten Hag, with all the respect I have for them, they didn't improve a single player. Like, I can put my finger on one player to name and say that they definitely improved under either Amorim or Eric Ten Hag. And of course, if no player from the squad of 25 players doesn't improve under these 2 coaches, of course, not even the best of the best, which is Marcus Rashford, in my opinion, in the last 5 years for Manchester United, or Bruno Fernandes, of course, didn't improve at all. And it's very, 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 it's normal. It's normal to happen when you have a constant performance. You will stagnate, and you do not improve that easily. And of course, if Marcus Rashford comes to an attacking fluid with patterns that are clearly indicated and very easy to understand the rhythm and basically what the philosophy of your coach is, which is Hansi Flick and Barcelona. His numbers, like I said, I think Rashford with constant minutes will get 20 to 25 goals and assists, because there is a player in Marcus Rashford. He is the one that will try his best to prove to the others that there is still a player in him, and he will be the first that will basically give his best and sacrifice all, because he's still maybe not a kid, but he's still a human that will leave everything behind in England. And because if I'm not mistaken, it's the first time Marcus Rashford leaves England. His only spell was still in England with Aston Villa, and he will leave everything behind to go and prove to himself and to the others that he's still one of the best players in the world, which he was in, I think, in 2018 or 2019. And like you said, Marcus Rashford was arguably the best player Aston Villa had in that tie with PSG, the home one. And I have a few people that I follow on Twitter that are Aston Villa watchers and analyzers, and they said they still don't understand why Unai Emery subbed Marcus Rashford off, because what Marcus Rashford produced in that home tie against PSG, which is, I see a lot of people calling them the most dominant side in the last 10 to 15 years. I think it's over exaggerated, but they got that statute because of something. And Marcus Rashford produced one of, maybe if not the best football an Aston Villa produced that year. And it's absolutely incredible, in my opinion.
Absolutely, and this has been a pattern throughout Marcus Rashford's career as well. Whether he's playing well or playing badly, he always seems to perform very well against the top sides. And I think in the Champions League, especially, I think in the latter stages where we maybe need that extra little bit of quality. Thinking back to, let's say, the Inter Milan tie and say moments in the Dortmund tie, etc., where the games are really tight. For me, Marcus Rashford's in those kind of games where teams are going to kind of push up the pitch against us and leave that space in behind. I think he's one of the best forwards at kind of exploiting that space. And I just think he's really improved all round on Unai Emery. I think he's kind of Unai Emery is a very kind of wise coach at kind of maximizing the stronger parts of a player's game. Maybe not kind of making them as complete as what Hansi Flick for me can make him, but I really think that confidence he's built from that Villa spell will really help him. I really do believe that. And his record against Manchester City, his record against Liverpool speaks for itself in terms of getting goals in those games. PSG a couple of years ago when Man United overturned a massive deficit. I think they were 2-0 down from the home leg and then went away to PSG. And Marcus Rashford was absolutely unplayable. Yes, I know obviously this was sort of 6 years ago or so. But we have to remember as well, Rashford scored 30 goals in a very unbalanced Man United side little over 2 years ago in 2022, 2023 for what was a very average side, apart from Marcus Rashford's goals. If you take Rashford's goals out of that team, Manchester United performed at the same level they have kind of for the last sort of 3 or 4 years. It was just his goals that made the difference that season. We saw against Barcelona in the Europa League, his performance at the Camp Nou was absolutely phenomenal. The defense we had that season, in terms of Kunde, Christensen, Araujo, Balde, it was breaking record after record after record, and Rashford was absolutely exceptional, I thought, in the away leg, and he has shown in the big games he can perform. There's no question about it, and that really, really sells him to me, I've got to say. And what I really like about Rashford as well is the fact that he's so desperate to sign for us. It's a blessing that we've got this. How many years have we had where we've struggled in terms of not struggled, struggles the wrong word, but players haven't sort of gone the extra mile to sign for Barca. Nico Williams, for example. Marcus Rashford sees the potential of this team. Marcus Rashford clearly watches this Barcelona team quite strategically, quite tactically as well. He understands what he can do in this Barca team straight away. He did a recent interview kind of praising Lamine in terms of saying how much he'd enjoy playing alongside him. And you can clearly see he studied, Lamine and his qualities. And I'll just look at Rashford and our record with these types of signings, versatile forwards. I'm thinking back to say, obviously Pedro wasn't a signing, but similar kind of idea. Very successful player for Barcelona. The fact that he could play in any of the front three positions really helped us from a squad building point of view. Alexis Sanchez, again, really helped us from a squad building kind of point of view. David Villa. Our record with these kind of signings, we haven't made enough of these signings really over the last couple of years. We haven't made enough. And it's just refreshing that we are bringing a versatile forward into the team. Of course, I'm not saying Marcus Rashford is necessarily at the level of an Alexis Sanchez or a David Villa, but if you can get a confident Marcus Rashford, he can score goals in this team. And I totally agree. 20 to 25 goals and assists with a reasonable amount of minutes is very possible for Marcus Rashford next season. And if he does get himself into the first team week in, week out, he could get even more than that for me. And that really sells him to me in terms of the bad points against Marcus Rashford. It's more about the consistency side of things. But I'm not a big believer in consistency because, of course, we spoke about consistency with Rafael Leao. For me, the environment's very important as well. It's very difficult to be consistent in a team itself that isn't consistent. Manchester United are a million miles away from that. AC Milan, a million miles away from that. So I never really held that or have held that against Marcus Rashford, really.
Yeah, it's very important when talking about Marcus Rashford is to take into context that next season, the 2026 season, will be a World Cup season. and that means that 82 or 70 games per season, which is of a lot for a footballer. I know Jules Koundé came out and said that footballers cannot be held to 70 to 80 games per season because it's too much. It's even with this club World Cup and the normal World Cup between nations, it's actually over exaggerating with the number of games that they play. And Marcus Rashford helps resting your best player, which is Lamine Yamal, because Rafinha, like you said, on some extent can play on the right, because the dynamics of a right winger in Hansi Flick system is that the right winger is the playmaking one, and the Rafinha on the right can be a very good playmaker and not a change his whole basically his whole play style from being a finisher to being a right winger. And the second point you said that we saw with Nico Williams, he basically didn't want to wait 1 or 2 weeks for us to get the right finances on point and officiate his signing. And Marcus Rashford, I think even since December, he tries and sacrifices all for him to come to Barcelona. And excuse me, and basically does everything is in his power for him to come to this team. And I think it's beautiful to see that youngsters that became grown-ups and basically pro footballers do everything in their power to come to this Barcelona side is pure evidence of the fact that we are finally on the right track, and we again are the standard of football and we dictate the tone. And the third and last point that I wanted to say is that I think we should buy Rashford. I don't buy, like, we should loan him with an option to buy, not a mandatory one, because if he proves in a loan that a loan also helps the motivation of him. Basically, when you buy him, he has a assurance and he says, "Oh, maybe I don't have to prove my all because I'm already bought. I can do whatever I want." To some
Yeah.
extent, but if he comes with a loan, he basically is obligated to prove the rest of the world that he deserves to stay, and he deserves to be bought with I don't know, 25 to 30 millions of euros, and to stay in Barcelona for the rest of his 2 to 3 years. And that, yeah, that's why I said the loan with an option to buy is the perfect type of deal for Marcus Rashford.
I agree. I totally agree. I think it's out of the three options. It says a loan with option to buy, loan with obligation, or just making a permanent sign. I think 40 million, I think euros has been quoted by Manchester United, which Aston Villa have decided not to pay. I'm not reading too much into that because Aston Villa have got financial fair play obligations to meet as well, where they're probably having to sell players before they buy players at this moment in time. On the from an outsider looking in, that might not be the case, but it's the impression I certainly get from reading between the lines. So it's a strange one in that kind of sense. I do totally agree. I think you just got to keep Marcus Rashford fully focused. I think a lot of the things that have been written about Marcus Rashford, and what I like about Marcus Rashford is the fact that, to me, the way he's been criticised in the English media over the last year has been an absolute embarrassment. I think throughout the last sort of 3 or 4 years, it's been very bad. Even when Marcus Rashford's been playing fantastically well, been doing charitable initiatives. He's one of the most charitable footballers in England at this moment in time. There's no question about it. He was absolutely amazing during the COVID pandemic in terms with incentives, and he got criticised. It's the thing. He has been heavily criticised in the English media. And I just think, for me, when I look at Barcelona is a club which, even in Spain, well, especially in Spain, really, is a club that people don't like. People don't like Barcelona. It just feels to me, in terms of, we have a bit of a siege mentality over the last sort of couple of years. Juan Laporta feels like Marcus Rashford is perfect for the environment in terms of proving everyone wrong. How many players have we had? I've already said before, Rafinha, it says Eric Garcia, Ferran Torres, at times. Every single player in the team's had question marks. Even Pedri was getting question marks from certain parts of the Spanish media. Every single player has proven themselves at some point. And just for me, Marcus Rashford going into an environment like that, happy environment, an environment that's successful already and looking to go on that next level, I really think he'll thrive in it. And you also mentioned as well, Robbie, that it's a World Cup year. It's a big opportunity for Marcus Rashford. He's coming into his physical prime, the prime of his career now, sort of 27, 28. Big opportunity for him to be the starting left winger for England. It's the one position, well, a couple of positions where England are weak, but in the attacking areas, the left wing, no one especially stands out at this moment in time. And for me, Marcus Rashford, if he can get any sort of performance at Barcelona he will be England's starting left winger. I do genuinely believe that. I think Thomas Tuchel will look at Marcus Rashford and think, he is a player I want in this team. A runner in behind to balance out the likes of Harry Kane, Bukayo Saka, Jude Bellingham. I really do believe Marcus Rashford's also got that incentive going into it. But just one thing, Robbie, would it be a deal breaker for you if Manchester United insisted on a loan with an obligation to buy? If they wouldn't do the business without that, would that be a deal breaker for you? Would you step away from it, or would you still look to sign Marcus?
I think we're the one in control of this
Of
basically
course.
deal because Rashford has cut ties with Manchester United completely, and he can force a deal like Juan Garcia did, if I'm not wrong, and maybe basically the ball is in our court, and we can tell them that yeah, of course we can have an obligation to buy, but for 40 millions, I think it's too much because as much as I love Rashford and how much he has proved, he didn't prove that he's a 40 million player, and we don't have the luxury of risking this type of deals because 40 millions for us in this type of situations in the we have some financial restrictions, it's too much. But yeah, like I said, if we force the deal, and of course Marcus Rashford forces the deal since December, they will probably listen to us, and it will only be a loan with an option to buy, in my opinion, 100%.
I agree. I'd be surprised if we agree to an obligation. I just think an obligation, I think it's the worst type of deal for football clubs, in terms of because it just puts a lot of pressure, not just on the club in terms of getting the best out of the asset. I think the player himself naturally loses that motivation that you spoke about, Robbie. And it's an interesting one in that kind of sense. I think 40 million is probably too heavy at this moment in time. And I think for what would be guaranteed from Rashford. As much as I do believe he will produce performances, I don't question that for 1 minute. I just think 40 million is a lot to pay for someone who Manchester United don't want. Ruben Amorim actually went out in the media and said he'd rather play as kit man rather than Marcus Rashford at one point. He actually said that in the media, something along those lines. And I just think Manchester United are in no position to try and play the long game here. We are the team with the strength here. Obviously Manchester United will want to get Rashford's wages off the books from their own point of view in terms of they need to rebuild their team. And Marcus Rashford is one of their highest earners, if not their second or third highest earner after Bruno Fernandes, probably. So it'll be very interesting from that point of view what deal it ends up being. But I would also agree, Robbie, I think it will end up being a loan with an option. I do believe that is the best option. And I don't really think anyone can complain about that. If it's a loan with an option to buy, if it doesn't work out, Marcus Rashford's took 40% wage cut to come to the football club. At the very least, it's better depth on that left wing than what we had last season. And I don't really see it's a win-win scenario, really. If it doesn't work, we haven't really committed too much to it. And what did you make as well, Robbie, just to finish off with, about the speculation that we might not just finish on Marcus Rashford, we might actually try and bring in another left winger as well. What did you make to that, or do you not think that will happen?
I don't think it will happen, and I hope it doesn't happen because I think it's too much. Because I hold Rashford to the highest standards, and I'm definitely so sure that he'll prove others wrong, and I believe in him because the culture fitting and the player coach and player fit from Rashford is it's impeccable. It's impeccable when in terms of squad building. When you look at Lamine Yamal and what type of winger does he need, you Marcus Rashford basically checks all the boxes. Marcus Rashford is the perfect left winger in terms of who Lamine Yamal needs, who Balde needs, and of course who Lewandowski needs, or Pedri, or the midfielders needs. And
Absolutely.
sorry to cut you off. And I
No.
think to buy two wingers, and especially I think Luis Diaz or Antonio Nusa. I'm not too sold on Antonio Nusa yet because in that Leipzig side, everyone gets to it, and there are a lot of spaces and a lot of basically attacking priorities that you can get a lot of good numbers. Xavi Simons and Seshko, of course, got great numbers, and he didn't. And I'm not too sold on him. And I think Rashford, with like we said, like we both said, a loan with option to buy will basically be the perfect deal of this summer. Of course, Juan Garcia is the best deal, but Marcus Rashford will be a close second, and he will definitely be the surprise signing that will guarantee 20 to 25 goals and assists. I'm very, very hyped about this Marcus Rashford deal. Very, very, very hyped.
I do believe it'll be a similar career remontada to Ousmane Dembele, for example. In terms of what he's done at PSG. I do believe it could be a similar thing with Marcus Rashford. I just think in a similar way he's been misprofiled along his career, and I just think he gets into a settled system in the right team. I do believe it will work out well with Rashford. And the other thing as well is I do believe that with Marcus Rashford maybe being a less heavy investment than what Nico Williams would have been, and there'll be less pressure on terms of trying to play Rashford, Rafinha, and Yamal at the same time. I think there'll be a case of one goes onto the bench, and we've got that option off the bench rather than trying to sort of shoehorn Rafinha into the 10 position, which I was never really particularly keen on. I don't think either of us were particularly keen on actually in terms of Rafinha going to the 10. We were kind of more keen on just being options off the bench and just having different depth in the squad for the different competitions that we're going to play. So that's something else that I think really impressed me with Rashford is the fact that hopefully, I certainly believe it'll be the case. He's not going to be a player who his head drops if he doesn't start every game. I don't believe that'll be the case at all. I think he's so keen to be part of this project. I really think his commitment's there no matter what, in that kind of sense. So I think that's going to really help us. The fact that he can come on for Lewandowski in the 9, he can come on for Lamine Yamal if we're cruising in the game, and he can go to the right wing, or Rafinha can go to the right, and he can come on for Rafinha. So having that kind of flexibility is really good from that point of view. So, and as well, just to touch on the left winger discussion, for me, centre back's a bigger priority than the left wing. If we get Rashford, of course, it all depends on getting Rashford. But if we do get Rashford in, I think it's got to be looking at the left side of the centre back situation. I really do believe that. I mean, would you agree with that, Robbie?
I completely agree, and I think it's a topic for another episode because there is so much to talk about this. And I always tweeted about this. First, you get Rashford because it's an easy deal. Like I said, we are the ones in control and in power in this type of negotiations. And then you test the waters for some left center back, in my opinion, because that's the most important one, not even the left winger.
I agree. I agree. I think it's just so key that we sort out in terms of that depth and the centre back positions. Obviously, last season we saw Inigo really, really pushed, and we will discuss it obviously in another video as well. Obviously, Pau Kubasi, we have to remember he's still only 18. Too many minutes too early is a bit of a risk in terms of his longevity. Obviously, Ronald Araujo, obviously, we'll discuss probably in another video as well. So it feels to me Rashford, centre back, and I would personally say if there is somehow money left over, maybe you could start considering an Antonio Nusa then, if there's money still left over. But for me, I kind of agree with you, Robbie. I think if you're committing to signings now where we need to get priorities in order, I don't think a project signing at left wing really makes sense unless we have got money left over once we've got the priorities through the door.
Yeah, I completely agree. A project left winger, first of all, takes money, and second of all, takes time. And I think the time is very, very little in this Barca squad because everybody, especially the academy, will push to be regulars in the first team, and there will be some kind of competition, even if you don't buy a left winger. And I think with Rashford, will be more than fine, more than fine.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's a massive improvement on last season alone, listen, last season we won 3 trophies, very close to winning 4, very, very close to winning 4. I think it'll be all good. But Robbie, we'll leave it there on this episode. Make sure you do keep an eye out for our other videos as well. We will have other videos going out. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't done already, and make sure you do check out Robbie on Twitter. I will leave the link to Robbie's Twitter on there as well. Absolutely highly recommend if you want to read Barcelona quality analysis. But Robbie, as always, mate, absolute pleasure.
Thank you for having me as well.
No problem at all, mate. We will leave it there, guys. Hit that subscribe button, hit the like button, and let us know in the comments down below how happy would you be with Rashford, and do you think that kind of solves the attacking conundrum for Barcelona? Let us know in the comments down below, and we will leave it there. Big thanks for watching, guys, and we will see you later. Cheers, guys.